Order, order. Welcome to this meeting of the Council. I'm Councillor James Caston, Chairman of Mid-Suffolk District Council, and I will be chairing this meeting today. May I first remind you of some domestic arrangements. Toilets are situated outside of the meeting room opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to do so. And could you please switch off your mobile phones or make them silent, and also turn your laptops to silent. We will be having fines for telephones ringing in council meetings of £10, and if I can work out whose laptops made a noise, that will be a £5 fine. And you may think you've got away with it, but you'll probably get an email. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there is confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. And if you haven't signed in, could you please do that now? Thank you, and I'll move to the agenda. Item 1 is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Pratt and Councillor Mayer.
And I'd like to take this opportunity to wish Councillor Pratt well and a swift recovery from his recent operation, and we hope to see him back in this chamber very soon. Item 2, declarations of interest by councillors. Are there any declarations of interest?
Chair, can I just make an announcement?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. As members of Suffolk County Council and Stowmarket Town Council are likely to have an other registrable interest in agenda item 12, I have granted a dispensation to those members to enable them to participate in the debate and vote on this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3, to confirm that... Oh, I apologise.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of Stowmarket Town Council or Suffolk County Council, but I need to declare an interest in item number 12 because I am a member of the Stakeholder Forum and I'm the event director of the Chiltern Fields Park Run, which is mentioned in the paper, so I thought I'd better declare it.
Okay, thank you. Right, Councillor Mansell, you'll need to leave the room if you have another registrable interest, and I think that...
It's not pecuniary.
I'll pass it over to the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. Under the new Code of Conduct, other registrable interests where the item has a direct impact on the well-being or finances of the body in which you have an interest, requires the councillor to leave the room and not participate in the vote and the debate. So it's slightly different to the old regime of local non-pecuniary interests.
So I presume you're saying that's the well-being of the organisation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So now item 3, MC 22.5, to confirm the minutes of the annual meeting held on the 26th of May 2022 for accuracy only. Are there any issues of accuracy? Could I have a proposer for those minutes? Councillor Haddenham.
Thanks, I'm happy to propose the minutes.
And could I have a seconder? Councillor Muller. Thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hands. We'll do this by a show of hands, and that's a majority, so that's carried. Now, item 4 is Chairman's announcements. I refer you to paper MC 22-6 for noting. Also, in addition to this, these events, our Vice Chair attended on the 16th of June Woodley Community Primary School to celebrate them becoming the first school in Suffolk to become a school of sanctuary, which is welcoming asylum seekers with open arms, as the Vice Chair described it to me. So thank you very much. And item 5 now, leaders' announcements. I would like to invite Councillor Morley to present her update. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. As always, I want to keep my announcements as brief as possible. And in particular, I want to do so this month as we have 2 really significant papers on the agenda this evening. And so I want to ensure we have as long as possible to discuss them both. Firstly, the future of council housing in Mid-Suffolk. There surely can't be a more important time in the middle of a cost of living crisis for us to be confirming how we are going to ensure we provide truly affordable, safe, warm, environmentally friendly homes for those families and individuals who are most in need in Mid-Suffolk. And secondly, we have an amazing opportunity to create a holistic wellbeing hub which will bring together education, sport, leisure and health facilities. This would be a facility not just for Stowmarket but for residents and communities from across our district. And just to mention a few other live matters. The first The first is our current community engagement in relation to the parking strategy. Drop-in events are happening in Thurston, Woolpit, Stowmarket, Needham Market, Great Blakenham, Debenham and Eye. There's also an online survey which will be open until the 31st of July, and also paper copies can be requested by phone. As Councillor Fleming said when she launched this consultation, our aim is to have a parking strategy that is fit for the future. We must ensure shoppers, tourists, visitors, residents, workers and commuters have access to sufficient, good quality, safe, welcoming and easy to use parking. The parking strategy aims to reflect both the need for private vehicle parking and also our climate change ambitions, and support more sustainable transport options such as buses, trains and cycling in order to connect our communities. As you know, we are also currently consulting residents as part of our new annual residents survey. The fieldwork for this began this month and will last for 2 months. The results of this survey will enable us to measure some of our short-term outcomes, such as resident satisfaction, feeling informed, influence, communication preferences, personal well-being, community resilience, and feelings of safety across Mid-Suffolk. I know the report is yet to be considered at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which will be happening on Monday, but as the papers have been published, I want to take this opportunity to personally thank the directors of SIFCO. The report going to Overview and Scrutiny confirms that SIFCO generated 3.75 million in net income for Mid-Suffolk and Babergh last year, which of course enables us to continue to deliver and improve services for our residents without resorting to increases in taxes or charges. And I want to finish with 3 other thank yous. Firstly, to Councillor Brewster. Gerard has been a quiet but constant reassuring support both to me and to the council over the last 3 years as deputy leader. Gerard is not the most vocal member of my group, but his kindly, gentle wisdom has been a big influence. In short, Gerard has been my rock. He has unfortunately had to step away from the role of deputy leader for personal reasons, and Councillor Richardson has kindly agreed to step into the role. Harry has some big shoes to fill in replacing Gerard, but I'm sure he will be a fantastic deputy leader. I would, though, like to put on record my thanks to Gerard for all his hard work, and I hope you will join me in a round of applause as a token of our collective thanks. Thank you. And I also want to thank and wish good luck to two of our assistant directors. This is Gavin Fisk and Cassandra Clement's last full council meetings with us before they move on to Ipswich Borough Council and East Suffolk Council respectively in July. We have seen Gavin rise through the ranks with us over the last 16 years. He has grown with us. However, we always knew that at some point his talent and enthusiasm would result in him leaving us. Gavin has completely transformed and modernised the housing service and leaves us in a strong position with the HRA business plan tonight. We wish him all the best over the road at Ipswich. And Cass joined us in 2019 and has had a dramatic impact in her directorate in that time. She has carefully overseen the creation of a single public realm service for our councils, has diligently supported our leisure service through the difficult last few years during a pandemic, and has, of course, driven Mid-Suffolk forward in our climate change and biodiversity ambitions. Both Gavin and Cass have been crucial in supporting the councils through the pandemic. Thank you to both of you, and we wish you all the best for the future, and please do keep in touch as part of our wider Suffolk family. Again, councillors, please join me in a huge round of applause of thanks for Gavin and Cass.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Now we'll move to item 6, to receive notifications of petitions in accordance with the council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. None received.
Item 7, questions by the public in accordance with the council procedure rules.
Again, Chair. None received.
So, item 8, questions by councillors in accordance with the council procedure rules. I refer you to the questions in the tabled papers. I would like to invite Councillor Otten to ask a question. Councillor Otten.
My laptop's gone off. You've got my question in front of you, Chairman. The reason I put it in these terms is that I was absolutely horrified to hear a programme on Radio 4 where people were having to use their payment and go to a pawnbroker to actually cash their payments and therefore charged a fee. So that in the end of the day, they still were not receiving the full amount. So my question is to Councillor Whitehead, please. I won't repeat the question as you all have it in front of you, but I obviously was quite shocked when I had this information from Melissa about the number of people still not in receipt of their £150.
Thank you, Councillor Otten. I'd now like to invite Councillor Whitehead to respond.
I've changed. Oh, it's come back, is it? All right, okay, thank you. Thank you for your question, Councillor Otten. As at the 17th of June this year, the Council had paid out 4.2 million to 28,273 households. This is around 82% of those identified as potentially eligible. The majority of these council taxpayers pay their council tax by direct debit and have been paid. Those remaining are either where there is a mismatch between the account name and the bank account name, or the first direct debit is still to be collected for council tax, which is part of the prepayment assurance. Those cases where there is a mismatch, which the council has been unable to resolve, will be written to this week. For those 6,741 who still do not pay their council tax by direct debit, a letter was issued on the 10th of June. The letter signposted to a secure online form where there are two options, either to provide bank details so the council can credit the £150 to their bank account, or elect to have the money paid onto their council tax account, reducing future payments. A 3-week window was given for completion of this form, and at the end of the 3 weeks window, any council taxpayer who has not completed the form will have the £150 allocated in full to their council tax account. And as at the 19th of June, 46% of caseload have completed the form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Otten, would you like to have a supplementary question?
Yes, I certainly do. I am still really concerned about the number of people that are going to slip through the net on this. But what I would like to know from yourself or the leader of the council is, will Mid-Suffolk be involved in establishing the criteria and the mechanisms for assessing the upcoming government hardship funds and energy grants? Because I can see a complete fiasco, the rate we're going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Otten. Councillor Whitehead, would you like to respond?
Yes, I don't have the exact mechanism to hand, but my understanding from just general reading is that I think these future rebates are going on to either electric, gas accounts, and I think there's still some confusion as to how people say who use oil, for example, rather than gas accounts will be paid, but it's something that's obviously being looked at very closely at the moment.
Yes, the Chief Executive would like to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, as Councillor Whitehead says, my understanding is that district councils won't be involved in that at all.
I've heard that.
Thank you. We'll now move on to a question from Councillor Davies. Could you please answer your question? Ask your question.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is, why can't SIL funds be used for feasibility studies for community infrastructure projects? And that question is to Councillor Burns.
Thank you very much. Councillor Byrne, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Well, there has been a cross-party cross-council member working group ever since SIL expenditure first started in 2018. This was following the introduction of SIL in 2016. This member panel has developed the SIL expenditure framework which Council has adopted. It has been revised each year since 2018 and indeed has been meeting in June this year to agree a revised SIL expenditure framework which will come to Council in July. It has long been the view of the member group that SIL funds should be spent on the infrastructure itself, which is also required by the legislation, not on feasibility studies for community-led projects. Of course, in many communities where development has occurred, those parish councils receive neighbourhood SIL themselves, which they can use to develop projects through the feasibility stage ahead of making a bid to the council's SIL funds. There is also an opportunity for parishes to receive support through our community grants system, and together with the prospect of other external funding, parishes and other local community projects enjoy the potential of different funding streams to support their feasibility studies and start-up costs for their infrastructure projects. The member working group includes myself, Councillors Mansell and Field, as well as Councillor Brewster. So if you would like a more detailed discussion with any of us, or indeed with Christine Thurlow, who leads on SIL from an office perspective, then I'm sure any of us would be happy to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Davies, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Chair, yes. Thank you for that explanation. I have spoken to Christine Thurlow on several occasions and will take that up again My supplementary question is, why has, on 2 occasions now, a feasibility plan been funded for Network Rail at the same site?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yes, why has SIL funds been used to pay for feasibility studies to Network Rail on 2 occasions at the same site?
Yes, I think you're probably right about that, and I would need to look into it to give you a proper response. If you wouldn't mind giving me a bit of time to do that, and we'll get back to you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mellon, would you like to ask your question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Simple question. What progress has been made on the electric bus project, which was agreed earlier this year?
And that's questions to Councillor Flatman. Would you like to respond, please?
Thank you, Councillor Mellon, for your question. Following a discussion with my fellow Cabinet members regarding the research and development undertaken so far in respect to the electric bus funding project, we would like to invite all councillors to a briefing about our steer to officers so far and our planned approach to decision making, including the formation of a cross-party working group. Councillors will receive an invitation to this meeting later this week. Well, that could be tomorrow. In addition, we have an intern in place for the summer who is tasked with and has commenced evidence gathering specifically in respect of other regional and national schemes and their short and long-term viability and sustainability.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flatman. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Mellon?
Yes, thank you. I'm very glad to hear about the cross-party working group. Since the main, I think, limiting factor in getting this project started is the long lead time for delivery of an electric bus, should we not quickly decide which model to choose and get one ordered? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman, to respond, please.
Thank you, Councillor Mellon. I think there'll be a lot of viability studies and a lot to decide on. If you're a county councillor, you will know that the county are leading in a pilot at the moment on catch, and they've extended this pilot to December, and I think it would be absolutely, what can I say, mad to go down a road that we might have answered for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flatman. So to move on to item 9, MC 22.7, the development of the Housing Revenue Account business plan. I would like to invite Councillor Lavinia Haddingham to introduce this paper, MC 22.7. This report is for noting and comment only.
Thank you. I'm pleased to introduce report MC/22/7. Typically, a housing revenue account business plan sets out the priorities, plans and actions for council houses over the next 30 years. Our HRA business plan was last revised in May 2017. Therefore, it is pertinent that after 5 years, a fundamental review of the plan and its priorities took place. The purpose of such plans is to show that we can maintain our existing housing assets and deliver a quality customer-focused service, as well as improve homes and neighbourhoods, while supporting and endeavouring to achieve the visions of the organisation's key strategies. An effective HRA business plan has become ever more crucial since central government announced the reform of the rules governing local authority housing finance and the introduction of the self-financing system a decade ago. Members may recall that last year they were both invited and consulted on what they saw were the emerging priorities when developing the HRA business plan. This included surveys and a focus group. Whilst in January this year, a paper was presented to full council on the progress being made to develop the plan and what the guiding principles of the plan would be. Then in May, we held an all-member briefing on the HRA business plan, for which we produced a frequently asked questions answer sheet in response to members' questions. Today you have the report and final version of the plan in front of you, which provides understanding of the revised HRA business plans and its aims and objectives prior to being presented to Cabinet in July for approval. I'm pleased to promote the key aims of the plan, which include increasing the stock of social housing owned by the HRA, through an ambitious development programme, including on average up to 65 new homes each year over the next 6 years. For the next 6 years. Developing new homes that are built to the highest standard, contributing to the Council's effort to ensure carbon neutrality, including an affordable housing strategy, a new build design guide and technical specification. Improving the quality of existing homes and communal areas and reduce the carbon footprint of existing council homes through investment in assets, community-led regeneration and working with communities and individuals, including the investment of more than £14 million to ensure that every home meets EPC-C by 2030, ensuring our homes and the management of them maintain and improve well-being outcome for individuals, families and communities alongside other council services and partners, making sure that HRA business plans continue to continuously remain financially viable and sustainable. It is vital that the HRA has a balanced financial plan that repays its debt within a reasonable period of time. Therefore, we can currently afford to build 65 new homes each year for the next 6 years. Future itinerations of the HRA business plan and reviews in subsequent years will determine the number the council that can afford to build in year 7, 8 and onwards. The exact number that we can build in year 7 and onwards will be dependent on continuous reviewing of the HRA finances nearer that time on an annual basis and accounting for changes that cannot be predicted today, e.g. further rises and falls in income or expenditure. The plan is focused on 7 main priorities, which are tackling and adapting to climate change, developing new council housing, investing in our current homes, involving our tenants in the running of the housing service, improving the services that we provide our tenants, improving the neighbourhood that we manage, and implementing digital transformation. Inevitably, there will be challenges ahead, including maximising our income, which by 2025-26 will be as much as 20 million per year, as well as being efficient and delivering value for money in our expenditure, which by 2025-26 will include having invested more than 17 million on repairs to council homes, more than 23 million on capital improvements to existing homes, more than 62 million on investing in new homes, as well as 33 million pounds of additional borrowing. And I would like to remind everyone that this is just this report is just for noting, and to say that Gavin is both here on his last full council, but Hazel is also here to answer questions, and Emily as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haddenham. So we'll now move to questions and comments. These comments will be recorded in the minutes and will be used by the Cabinet in the next round of this. I would ask each councillor to make no more than 2 contributions here, just to keep things moving and to try to be as direct as possible with questions and comments. So I'll open up to the floor. Thank you. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hadingham. Do you want me to do questions or comment and questions combined? Is that?
You can do whatever you like.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. How long have you got? Firstly, thank you, Matthew. Firstly, I just want to say that I think we all appreciate the work that has gone into this business plan, and we appreciate particularly the amount of staff hours that have gone into it over time and all the different ideas that have been put into this business plan. I think on the, I've got kind of 2 main areas of question, really. The leader's already referred to the cost of living crisis, and in the report itself, we talk about the one of the aims as being to reduce fuel poverty as well. So one of the things I don't quite understand is why, therefore, are we planning over time to move our housing stock from social rent to affordable rent, because that is much more expensive in this area than social rent. And maybe I've missed a meeting or something, but I wasn't aware that had been agreed as a particular strategy or focus. So I'm very concerned about that and would like an answer on that if possible, or if that's something that can be addressed, reviewed or whatever. The second area is in the report, it refers at the beginning to 7 scenarios, but yet in the report itself it only gives detailed comment about 2 particular scenarios, scenario 1 and scenario 2, which then, or scenario 5, which is then renamed scenario 2, which is slightly confusing. But I just wondered therefore what's happened to the other, and also scenario 4 is actually mentioned, but just mentioned in passing. So could we have some background really on what was happened with the other scenarios? Are there ones that have been dismissed? Are there ones that it was felt they just wanted to focus on 2 scenarios within this report? And just to round that off really, how then are we going to measure success? So how are we going to say whether, yes, we've managed to reduce fuel poverty, yes, we've got more people into very cost-efficient and environmentally friendly housing with low costs and so on. So how are we actually going to measure all of this? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. Councillor Scarf. Okay, yes, please come back.
Thank you. I'm actually going to pass over to Gavin to give you your answers. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hanningham, Chair, Councillor Eburn. Just to try and pick up some of the points, in relation to the move to affordable, apologies if there's any confusion in both the report or the plan. There is no plan or step change to move from social rent to affordable rent in terms of any sort of blanket policy or move. So obviously any introduction of affordable tenancies would be on the basis of new schemes coming forward and the viability of those schemes. In terms of the scenarios, an apology on my behalf. This has been an iterative process over a long period of time, and in the second half of last year we were focused on a number of scenarios as you see them. So around delivering carbon neutral, zero carbon by 2050, that fell into one of the 2 scenarios that you see in the plan. Then around how many homes could the plan afford, you see that in terms of the delivery of new homes over the next 6 years, as Councillor Hadding has outlined. In terms of the Investor Save initiatives, that is one that as a council we still need to focus on. We can see through looking at Investor Save initiatives, and it describes it in the plan as to what that investment is, and then seeking a return, actually the cumulative effect, the benefit that would have on the plan over the long term. So we need to identify what those potential Investor Save initiatives should or could be in the future. The plan doesn't propose what those are now. Effects of a 1-year rent freeze is scenario 2 in the plan, what was scenario 5, and then looking at a combination of those. So apologies that it's not clear. We focused on those initial variety of scenarios, and then we boiled the plan down to the 2 scenarios that you see in more detail. I think the point to make is that in terms of a plan, this shouldn't be a plan that is seen and commented on and approved by cabinets in July, and then you come back to revisit it in 5 years' time in the same way as the last plan was developed. This needs to be an iterative process. It needs to be ongoing, and it needs to evolve every day. We know the world in which we live is changing, and as such, rises in inflation, decisions that you will make as a council next year in relation to rent rises need to be considered, need to be taken into account in the plan every working day, and it will be for colleagues to develop and scenario test and robustly stress test the plan on a continuous basis as well. In relation to reducing fuel poverty, clearly by improving the energy efficiency of all existing homes, we would expect those homes to be more efficient, thus use less energy and thus less cost, but inevitably that's on the basis of depending on what's happening with the cost of fuel, electricity, gas and oil. I think it's important to note in terms of the plan, this work isn't starting today, it isn't starting tomorrow. It actually has started some time ago when you as councils and councillors approved significant solar PV installations back in 2014-15, or the fact that officers are diligently every day looking at more efficient forms of heating. We're installing air source heating as we speak to improve the energy efficiency. So I think what we can do through the work with the Energy Saving Trust, we have a real good benchmark of what our accommodation is and how efficient it is, and time will tell over the coming years as to the improvements that we can make to those energy efficiency of those homes.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chair. Well, in relation to scenario 2 again, actually, page 46 states at the bottom, it will also be important to capitalise on any opportunities to bring into the Council additional government grants through schemes such as the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, which will support and contribute towards the cost of retrofit measures and which have deliberately been excluded from this financial scenario work. Obviously, I understand that you can't have it in here because you haven't bid for anything, so therefore you can't make it part of your plan. But my question would be, question 1, realistically, how ambitious are we going to be in seeking opportunities to actually achieve some grant funding from central government to decarbonise our housing stock? And secondly, mentioned before, when the housing revenue has been discussed at Overview and Scrutiny Committee, we talked about government grants towards brownfield sites, enabling brownfield sites to come forward to deliver housing. I mentioned at the time one in particular in Stowmarket, which has seen no housing, did have planning permission on, right in the centre of town. So we didn't achieve anything with that because we didn't apply. So how ambitious are we going to be as a council? Because the director has just actually said that we are going to look at every opportunity day by day in regards to this. How ambitious are we going to be in trying to apply for external funding to help us with our decarbonisation costs? Because it would mean that we could achieve what we want to achieve quicker and also with less expenditure on the HRA account. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The Assistant Director for Housing.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. I think the reality is that we as councils, Babergh and Mid-Suffolk, have already been applying for any government grants through the Suffolk Climate Change Partnership, through the work of colleagues in the council, and we have been successful. We've been successful in a range of opportunities over the past 2 years. I think in terms of where we were even 6 months ago in terms of our stock, we didn't have the intelligence that we do now through the work with the Energy Saving Trust, and that has given us a really, really clear indication and picture of every single one of our houses, based on more than 80 different measures. And we've had staff honing that and refining that every day. I think that puts us in a really good position because now with that data, as and when the government potentially releases new tranches of social housing decarbonisation or any other funds, we'll be really well placed to apply for those from the get-go. And so in terms of that ambition, I would expect us to be applying and being successful in attracting some of those funding opportunities. And as you say, as you correctly say, we couldn't include any potential grant within the plan for obvious reasons. But as we receive tranches of funding, and we know as a social housing sector that providers can't do it alone, the cost of retrofit is so significant, it will require additional external investment. Will be best placed. Chair, if I could just take a moment to move away from the question, because it would be amiss of me not to, just to comment and to note the kind words that were given earlier in the meeting. 16 years is a long time. Some would probably say too long, working for the two councils. As Councillor Morley described, I have seen a huge amount of change, initially working for Babergh and then Babergh Mid. I think my reflections are Babergh Mid-Suffolk have evolved they've improved and developed to the councils that they are today. And I think that's testament to all members in this chamber this evening, members that I may have worked with in the past, and to all of our colleagues and staff. So I know when I'm talking to people in the sector, I know when I'm talking to colleagues in neighbouring councils or further afield, Mid-Suffolk has a really good reputation, and that's down to all of you and those not in this room. So if I could just take the opportunity to wish you every success in the future. I will be only across the road, so I will be watching, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We still have a question from Councillor Field, please.
Looking at the report, I see there's a comment about average void costs. 4,500. The sector average is 5,800, so we do well there. The upper quartile performance is 2,100, so that doesn't look so bright. It might be just the amount of work that's done, or it might be the efficiency with which it's done. You might want to comment. But the real question that triggers for me is the other numbers in this report, the management costs, for instance. Have we benchmarked them against other suppliers, and where do we stand there? Are we in the same sort of position as something more than double the upper quartile performance, or do we do a lot better than that? So that's the first question. The second one really revolves around rent increases. I always get a bit excited about this at budget times. I know the plan intends, as usual, to provide or apply a CPI plus 1% rent increase. And there's a scenario that you've looked at which says, well, supposing we scrub around that next year, we don't do it every year. The scenario sort of suggests that the result will be disaster, which I find quite surprising. You know, it is significant, but it's not that a dramatic gesture. And the point which concerns me basically is next year's CPI is going to be what? Let's have a guess. 12% perhaps, so CPI plus 1% is going to be a 13% rent hike for what are not the richest people in the world and are fairly unlikely to be getting 13% salary hikes. So that's my allocation of 2 questions, I guess. The third one I'll keep.
Thank you very much, Councillor Field. The Assistant Director for Housing, do you wish to comment?
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up the benchmarking one. We have, in recent times, joined Housemark. It's a recognised industry standard of benchmarking, and so the benchmarking data that we've been able to add to the report for the year 2020-21 is from that. It's relatively new. We are validating some of that benchmarking data. You'll understand and appreciate that being 2 separate sovereign councils and thus 2 landlords, it's important that we monitor and reflect on those costs. And clearly with something like voids, it's made up of both revenue and capital expenditure. So it's important that we refer to and make best use of our capital budgets in terms of new kitchens, new bathrooms when conducting a void. I think if you look at some of the benchmarking data, for example, around your back office costs, your recharge to the general fund for HR and ICT and finance and the like, you'll see that we are really, really lean in terms of those costs in comparison to others in the sector. So that's a real positive. Probably the question is that, well, it makes it harder to find additional savings beyond that in the future if we are so lean. I think my reflection as the Director of Housing and as a housing management team, we know that we've got further to go in terms of our performance. Some colleagues have referred to it as middle of the pack in terms of jostling with other housing providers. What we do know with the onset of the social housing bill is that the level of benchmarking, but more so the scrutiny of the housing service, both in terms of pounds, shillings and pence, but more importantly, the safety of our housing and the quality and the levels of satisfaction with our housing from our residents and tenants will be under the spotlight and be under the scrutiny. And we've already done work in recent weeks to collect a baseline, and that's already produced an action plan to identify how do we make improvements, how do we increase the levels of satisfaction that our tenants have with us as a landlord, because frankly, we are striving for excellence. We need to do more. We need to be better. And then in regards to just the other question or comment around rents, yes, I think we, as a nation, are facing unprecedented times in terms of the cost of living crisis, inflation, and it will be a case of in February next year when you sit down as a council to decide council tax and rent increases for council tenants, there may have to be some difficult decisions. There may have to be an acceptance that of decisions in terms of whatever that increase may or may not be. I think the important thing that I would know as an officer is that decision made on that night has an impact for that year, but it also has an impact for every future year beyond that. And I know the report that we produced for February's full council in relation to rents, and forgive me because it's for this financial year, but it looked at a 4.1% increase. The impact of not doing that over 10 years, 5.8 million. Over 30 years, 17.4 million. So you see the cumulative effects on the plan when you're looking at a plan over that length of time. So I haven't got the answers here today in terms of what will that rent increase be. They will be decisions that need to be taken over the course of the budget setting process for the next year.
Thank you. Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to invite the Cabinet member to think about what I'm about to say and perhaps give me a response. It's about the tenant satisfaction surveys and measures. I'm just a little bit concerned about how good the information back from doing tenant perception surveys will be. And the reason I'm saying this is that there are people who, some of my residents, who have complained to me about, let's say, the gas boiler not fixed, and they've got a date. The guy doesn't turn up. It's a new date is agreed. The guy turns up and he says, "Oh, I didn't realise it was like that. I'm not qualified to do that work. I'll have to send somebody else." And then the job is done and it's working perfectly. So I asked the tenant, "Well, how do you feel about it?" "Oh, good, it's really working well." So I said, "Well, what about the other 2 days that you had to have off work in order to sit there and not get the work done?" "Oh, it doesn't matter because it's done now." Now, that person might be satisfied. I'm not satisfied that that is a valid way of operating. One other may sound a silly case. Somebody had got their back gate was stuck. They couldn't get out of their back gate. So I said, "Right, okay, I'll open the gate. I'll use a hammer or something." I opened the gate and I reported it. Somebody came along, new gate, worked well for about 3 days. Trouble is, it then rained. So I go back. Somebody else comes out, sticks again. So this particular tenant says, "Well, look, don't worry. It'll close in the summer. I'll leave it open in the winter." And he's quite happy with that. Now, I'm not, as his representative, I have to say that is not good enough. So can you please let me know that there will be a way that you will carry out the tenant survey so that it picks up on the people who really don't want to complain. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you. Yes, you're absolutely right, Keith. That is not good enough. Both scenarios, like you say, having, saying that you're going to come and not, it's the worst kind of service you can get. And I have spoken to Ian about, when we've looked at the house, the benchmarks benchmark survey that we've had done earlier, the response times and like I said, I think it's one of the greatest complaints was not people turning up when they'd booked in. And I said that is the worst thing. It's a wasted day of work, you know, it's frustrating. You know, that is one of the things we really must pick up on, and I hope that we do in the future. And the gate sticking is beyond beggars' belief that, you know, that they fitted something that then, you know, wasn't fit for purpose, and that without sort of planing it, whatever needed to be done, if it was swelled in the damp, but the poor tenant was thinking, I'll leave it open because it's not working. That is shoddy service, and I hope we'll improve it in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, Chair, just want to say I would have liked to have asked a question about the leader's statement, but I couldn't put it on notice because I didn't know what the leader was going to be saying a couple of days ago. There doesn't seem to be any space on the agenda to do that.
So was it a question for clarification?
Well, it was, well, yes, it was in a way, in terms of it was something that was in the survey. I don't want to do it now, but there doesn't seem to be a natural place to do it on the agenda.
I will take questions for clarification, but not questions on the leader's announcements.
Okay, fine. I'll leave it. It won't.
Thank you very much.
Item we won't be able to raise because the survey will be over before we can. Anyway, first of all, I'd like to make a statement to say really pleased to see in the design guide that we are taking a form and function-based approach first, a built form first approach. That has consequences. If you're going to do a form-based first, built form first, it is going to mean probably losing an awful lot of bricks and mortar. You're going to end up with timber framing and six framing if you are going to take that approach. I welcome that approach, but it does have consequences. There was just two things within the built form and uses I would like to ask why we haven't moved from the aspire to into the we will. We are only going to aspire to have buildings that are accessible to public transport services and facilities. Given that's a prerequisite of planning permission, I would suggest that ought to be in the we will. We're only going to aspire to having a design that exceeds the minimum space standard. I really think we ought to put that in the we will. And we will only aspire for there to be wider benefits to the community in the stuff we build. Frankly, if there's no wider benefit at all to the community, we shouldn't be building it. It should be in the we will. So I just ask why those three items are in the we aspire and not in the we will. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to pass this on to Emily afterwards, but I think, actually, no, I'm going to let her, I don't want to get anything wrong, so sorry, I should let.
Thank you for that question. The design guide has been compiled, so we have a number of aspirational targets as well as the ones that we've kind of fixed and would like to deliver. The main reason for that is because we want to be able to deliver as many houses as possible within the resources that we have available to us. We need some flexibility around delivering in different schemes. That doesn't mean to say that just because it's in the aspire, we will aspire to column, that we won't actually try to aspire to achieve that. So in some villages, we know that there may be need for some affordable housing. Now, if those villages don't have the necessary transport available to them, should we not provide houses in those locations where there's a particular need? So again, it's looking very much at the details of the situations that we're dealing with and needing to have a little bit of flexibility. We do want to deliver the best quality homes that we can that are sustainable, that benefit their communities and deliver really good quality housing. That's what we're trying to achieve. The design guide is, again, an iterative document. Technology is changing much more quickly than we can update documents, and we need that document to be really aspirational, flexible, to help us deliver our ambitions to deliver really good quality housing for people who need it.
Thank you. Councillor Geek.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask about the graph on page 40, the closing stock? The number of social units in our stock is the blue triangle, and that starts at around 3,100 units of social housing in 2021-2. It declines a bit, then has a tiny uptick in 2027 to 28, but then it drops again to around 2,600 units in 2050. So where are those 500 social rented units going? Am I missing something?
The Assistant Director for Housing, please.
I'll answer that question, and if I could just then come back to a previous question, that would be great. In terms of the graph in relation to closing stock figures, obviously what the plan is describing is the delivery of new homes over the next 6 years. But what obviously the plan doesn't describe is how many new homes might be built in year 10 or year 15. So it is silent on that topic. But what the plan is continuously doing is making the assumption around right to buys and the sale of properties. So invariably what you see is a growth of stock because the council's building more homes than it is selling through right to buy. But then there's a bit of a cliff edge in terms of the graph because there's just nothing planned for year 15, year 20, year 25. What you'll see year on year is you'll just see that graph chunking along each and every year or group of years. So that's the reason why it's compensating for sales of council housing but not compensating for stock that you might be building in 20 or 25 years. Just to come back, if I could, to Councillor Wellham and his questions. I was really disappointed to hear what you said because personally I'm not happy listening to those examples. What I do know in terms of what we're doing within the council housing service is actually focusing on quality of repairs, customer service and providing feedback to tenants as being the three key mantras for ensuring that we improve results across the board. And I think from the survey results that we've done over the past 12 months, because we've had multiple surveys, we can see that there's been a decline in some areas of satisfaction. We have also seen areas of improvement, and we can pinpoint those to actual changes that we've made. So as a positive example, one of the areas in which we've improved is feedback to tenants, and that's as a direct result of the My Home bulletin that now goes to more than 3,000 tenants across both districts every month. What we're also doing, just to provide some reassurance, we have a complaints task force. It evaluates every single complaint, whether that be a customer contacting you and you contacting me, or a formal stage 1 or stage 2 complaint. And we do actively make sure that we learn lessons from every one of those examples. And I've got a range of examples I could give you in terms of changes that we've made. Going forward, not only are we going to be surveying tenants on a very regular basis rather than a situation where we had staff survey results in 2019 and then staff survey results in the last 6 months, we will be going forward asking continuous questions of tenants on a rolling basis throughout the year. And that will be focused around the 12 satisfaction measures that the social housing bill will advocate and for which you can benchmark any authority, any provider across the country. But we are going to go one step further, so we are going to ensure that there are transactional surveys around some of those areas, such as dealing with your ASB complaint, your recent repair. So we will be able to monitor the feedback through that approach. And that will be a mixture of phone, survey, postal, and online. And then just to provide another example of that, the tenant engagement policy that is on the forward plan for later this year, its aim is to make sure that tenants are at the heart of decision making and at the heart of developing the landlord service. And that's not to take away from the roles and responsibilities of every member in this room, but it's most important that I believe our tenants have a more active say in the management of their homes, the performance of us as a landlord. So we have actually just been surveying our tenants on that draft policy, speaking to the tenant engagement officer this afternoon. She's come into boxes of responses on that policy alone. So you can expect to see that coming forward on the basis of feedback from tenants currently being received.
Thank you. Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a very brief question. Looking at the design guide, I see in the what page this is now. Anyway, somewhere in there, it says that we will adopt a fabric-first approach, creating homes that are zero carbon ready. Now, this was a new phrase to me, so I was wondering if there could be some sort of explanation of what that means. I mean, I've heard of oven ready, but zero carbon ready, not entirely sure what that means. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I think in terms of zero carbon ready, we are just talking about zero carbon. We don't need the ready on the end. But the approach is a fabric-first approach, so something kind of similar to Passive House. And although we have both mandatory and aspirational goals, you know, our desire is to build fabric first, and to build properties that are energy efficient and cost our tenants and our residents who are purchasing through shared ownership less money in the future. And part of the design guide is also quite a lot around evaluation. So looking at schemes when they're completed, both with the project teams who took part, but also working with the tenants and looking at the bills and energy usage of those properties and comparing them. So we have some schemes that have completed this year with air source heat pumps that we'd like to evaluate, which are Section 106 schemes that we've purchased from developers, and are some of our own sites as well, just to have a look at what the energy use is like with the air source heat pumps, so that we can learn lessons to help inform this, these documents for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to go back to Councillor Geek's question about the graph on page 40. And I understand that that's a long-term plan and goes 25 years. And the actual business plan that we're discussing today is really just for the first 5 years. So I'm just looking at the first 5-year section of that graph. And it looks to me like the number of social housing units is diminishing, whilst the number of shared ownership and affordable rent properties is having a sharp increase, certainly in the first 3 years. So by the end of the time of this plan, we will certainly, looks to me like the forecast is that we will have a smaller proportion of social rent properties in comparison to our total number of properties. And yet in the answer to Councillor Eburn's question, we're told that that wasn't necessarily a policy that we're heading for. So it certainly looks like in this plan for 5 years, we will end up with a lower proportion of social rent properties. Could you just confirm that that is what it is telling me?
The Assistant Director for Housing.
Thank you. It's really difficult on the graph. I apologise for the sizing of it. I think that the reality of what the plan is showing is those right-to-buy sales, which are invariably going to most likely be on social rented properties, so thus losing socially rented. Clearly, the affordable housing strategy has an ambition to build new homes, ambition to build homes based on viability and affordability, and that will probably see more homes built of an affordable rent rather than a social rent. But I'm sure my colleagues, when looking at schemes, will be looking at the opportunities to build as many social rent as and when practicably possible based on scheme-by-scheme basis.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't intending to ask a question, and of course this is coming to Cabinet anyway, but I think I'll ask the question now rather than at Cabinet. I understand that it's difficult to forecast new bills beyond 5 years, and it's also difficult to even crystal ball gaze the right to buy numbers. But it seems to me, looking at this graph here, that I think, even if not in this business plan, but the next iteration, perhaps we ought to assume at least a minimum replacing all all right to buy housing, because if this fall off a cliff, I mean, it's the opposite of economies of scale. It's diseconomies of scale. It's with the same management costs on a smaller base, which to me just doesn't come over as realistic. So that's my comment anyway.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Matheson.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was keeping this back until members had worked their way through some of the these other points. I think it's probably more a question for the Chief Executive, actually, but up to anybody to answer it, really. And that is, how are we going to get the turnover of housing department staff really, and the vacancy levels, you know, under some sort of better control, because this is all very fine as a plan. The difficulty seems to me in actually carrying it out when we're, you know, running with 15% or something staff vacancies as we were a little while ago, and you know, particularly with the losses we've been suffering at the higher levels, with special reference to Catherine, obviously. So I mean, how are we going to actually control that?
The Chief Executive.
I think control is an interesting word. I don't think you can control that. I think at best you could do is manage that, and equally, whilst it could be seen as a loss, and it is a loss to us, it's obviously not a loss to that person who's gone on to do something else with their career, and we give them the praise and credit and goodwill when they leave us. As you'll appreciate, staff turnover or turnover recruitment generally, and not just in the public sector, is a big issue at the moment. There are lots of jobs out there, and people are able to go and acquire them. They're able to go and get better paid jobs elsewhere. And at the same time, our staff, which is a really good thing, are very attractive in that market. But that creates a challenge for us, as you rightly say. I think the figures are wrong that you quoted, and I'm not going to quote accurate figures because I haven't got them in front of me, but I think, as you said, 15 or so.
It was. I hope it's better than that now.
Yeah, so I'll find out the accurate figures as we stand today, and I'm happy to circulate those afterwards. But it is a constant challenge, you're absolutely right, to manage as best we can. And our intention always, and close your ears, both Gavin and Cass, our intention always is to recruit even better staff when people leave, but that isn't always possible.
Yes, thank you. I mean, it was the case that the housing department was significantly more difficult than other departments when we looked at these matters a few months ago in opposition briefing, I think.
Yes, please.
Just briefly to come back. You're absolutely right. Housing is a particular challenge. It's not unique, but it's a particular challenge because we find ourselves competing not only with other councils, which you would expect, but also with other housing associations who traditionally provide a greater package, both in terms of salary and benefits, than local government does.
Thank you. Councillor Otten.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to make a general statement, really. As many of you know, I have been a councillor for considerable length of time and can remember when councils were being, if you like, forced to go through the process of not having council housing. And I'm really delighted that the tenants of Mid-Suffolk certainly voted for Mid-Suffolk to remain their landlord or their land. Do I say landlord? Do I say land person? So obviously, you know, there are issues that we've had to deal with. But seeing some of the reports that we have seen on the news of, quite frankly, appalling social housing being run by so-called social landlords, not just private landlords, I'm actually pleased that we have control and that some of that control is in the hands of, you know, people that are prepared to, and are pleased and, if you like, passionate about having social housing and our own council stock. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Eburn, this will be the final person.
Thank you, Chair, for that. Just a very quick, short question. One of the points in the report was about improving the quality of estates and managing the sort of area around the housing, which is for the house, the tenants as well as the community. And these areas, such as pavements and little grass areas and so on, matter a lot in terms of being their upkeep. But there was a very, very small neighbourhood plan team of only 3 people managing that. So my plea would be they do a great job, but please, if we can get any more resource, which I know is not a question we're supposed to necessarily ask for, but it's just such an important area to make those areas look good and feel good for everybody, not just the tenants, but the general community. So if there's anything we do to boost that, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'll just ask Councillor Haddingham if she'd like to add anything. Well, okay, I'll have a question from Councillor Carter. This is the last one.
I just hope I can remember it now. Right. Yes. Firstly, to support the comments on regards to the surveys, should have declared there's been a council tenant having not filled in my survey. Gavin, I'm still waiting for my sink to be fixed since November. Still. I did have a question regards whether or not the rotation of current tenants. We are aiming to be providing the best quality housing for all our tenants. And there's going to be some properties that we have, for whatever reason, it's not going to be possible to upgrade. It's not going to be possible to do the retrofits. How are we going to go around? Are we going to be selling these off? And if so, do we need to be doing it before we start a larger picture of actually, so we don't want to be seen like backhand, well, not backhand, but trying to get rid of, it's going to be off-putting to people purchasing. So how are we going to go around that? How are we going to provide it to entice our tenants to maybe move to a more suitable location if that's where their area is, if that's where their support group is? How are we going to entice them to? How are we going to provide them suitable accommodation in the areas that they live in? And I did wonder as well, those properties that we can't sell, that we can't upgrade, are we going to be looking at demolishing these properties and building on the spot these more suitable properties? And how are we, if that's going to be the case, how are we going to temporarily house the tenants that are in those accommodations?
Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you. I think a lot of that will depend, on the individual properties, but I'm going to pass it on to Gavin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Carter, for the question. In relation to those properties that we've identified, you've got the table in the report in relation to the current energy performance of those. Where we've got properties that are poorly performing, clearly not energy efficient, and clearly will be contributing to additional energy costs, those Fs and Gs. We will be identifying those and recording those so that as and when they become available, for example, through the natural void process, then we might make a decision to do something different to those properties. We already have a housing asset review group. It meets regularly to evaluate all our council housing in relation to both buying and acquiring as well as disposal, and often it's a case-by-case basis. I think you touched on another point which was around downsizing or moving or encouraging or supporting residents to move where they may have ties elsewhere. Clearly we've obviously got our allocations and choice-based letting system for that, but I think there is more that we can do, and it does outline in the plan that actually we should be focusing on downsizing, possibly incentives, to maximise the use of our stock. Building and buying more housing to meet housing need is one thing. Maximising and making best use of what we've already got in terms of the right house for the right person in the right location of the right size, so on and so forth, is probably more important, and I think there needs to be a greater emphasis on that through the plan.
Thank you. Councillor Haddon, would you like to add anything?
No, but thanks for Gavin and his team for the hard work they've done. I'll miss you a lot.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone that took part in that, and thank the officers for the answers. especially Gavin, the usual very, very clear, knowledgeable answers, and we wish you well in future endeavours. Thank you. So, moving on now to item 10, MC 22-8, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Annual Report 21 to 22. I would like to invite Councillor Wellham to introduce his report, which is for noting.
Thank you, Chair. The main part of the report is indeed the appendix, and that sets out a summary of and review of the work that's been carried out by the Mid-Suffolk Overview and Scrutiny Committee and the Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the year April 21 to March 22. Our role as a Scrutiny Committee is to review areas of service provision within the context of the corporate plan and strategic priorities, and to hold Cabinet to account. We're also the committee which reviews call-ins of Cabinet decisions and any member call for action. Additionally, we may select for scrutiny the work of external stakeholders and service providers. We only scrutinise services which affect some or all of our residents, and only where we expect to add value by doing so. We scrutinise a range of topics, as those who have read the report will have noticed. We have commenced a joint review of transport provision across our district, focusing mainly on rural areas, and we have a joint task and finish group carrying out that work. The changes to the Babergh Cabinet at the end of April and early May reduced membership of their Overview and Scrutiny Committee, such that there was no Babergh Chair of Scrutiny and an insufficient number of committee members for a quorum for joint meetings or for the joint task and finish group. In complete contrast, I'm pleased to say that the Mid-Suffolk Overview and Scrutiny membership remained stable throughout the year, and their attendance and support and the quality of debate have been excellent. To finish, I would like to encourage all members to consider suggesting topics on which the scrutiny process can add value to the work of the Council, and members will see that the annual report is for noting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. Are there any questions for Councillor Wellham? Oh, Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd just like to make the point, I mean, Councillor Wellham has alluded to the membership of the Joint Committee, which has been fraught with difficulties during the year. We also had a meeting where we had a joint meeting, and we fell below 3 members of the Babergh Scrutiny Committee, so we had to abandon the Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So that's 2 meetings in a relatively short time where the work of Mid-Suffolk Overview and Scrutiny has been affected by the membership of our Partnership Council. We don't like reviewing things that affect both councils individually, but could he give us some assurance that if the situation arises again, that we actually move to a system where we actually have Mid-Suffolk Overview and Scrutiny Committee meetings without Babergh, so that we can actually conduct business which we should be doing as members of this council?
Councillor Wellham, would you like to respond?
Yes, I think that's a very good idea. We would have to select those topics carefully, and obviously we would have to discuss with Babergh why we are doing that. But certainly we need to move on. We've had a really bad few months, and we can't let that happen again. But yeah, definitely that's a good idea.
Thank you. Any further questions? Is there anything you'd like to add, Councillor Wellham?
No, Chair, thank you. I think I'm speaking on the next item anyway, so I'll speak then about that.
Yeah, thank you. And that report was for noting only. So we now move to item 11, MC 22-9, which is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Work Plan for 2022 to 23. I'd like to again invite Councillor Wellham to introduce his report, which will be for noting also.
Thank you, Chair. You have before you a proposed Overview and Scrutiny Work Plan with many gaps. The new Joint Committee have not yet met, and it would have been inappropriate for the work plan for the current year to have been drawn up by last year's committee members, even if we had been able to get a quorum. Work on adding to the work plan will commence next week when the new joint committee meets for the first time. In the meantime, you are invited to note the work plan, and I'm perfectly happy to answer any questions on it.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Wellham. Given that the task force on transport, and particularly rural transport, started in September, which is 9 months ago now, and a regular task group was supposed to be meeting on that, but obviously hasn't for reasons that Councillor Wellham has stated with regards to Babergh councillors. When can we expect that the next meeting on that task group to happen? And secondly, if I may, there was in the, it was referred to in the annual plan about the budget timing of scrutiny of the budget, but I note that in the work plan for this year, that scrutiny is still scheduled for January. So I'm not sure if Councillor Wellham can answer this, but perhaps an officer can, when that scrutiny, whether that scrutiny is expected to be brought forward, and is there supposed to be a change in the way the budget process is doing? Sorry, Chair, I'm just looking at Councillor Whitehead there. Thank you very much.
I'll go to Councillor Wellham.
Thank you very much. Yes, the Task and Finish group had all but finished its work. We had drawn up the draft final report. We were just waiting for officers to put that all together, and we were going to take it to the next Task and Finish group meeting, which didn't meet. So it's just a case of one more meeting, hopefully, to finish that work and then to hand it on to Overview and Scrutiny for them to take a look at. The budget time, we haven't entered into any discussions with officers about retiming anything such as the scrutiny of the budget. But I know that when we spoke with Melissa some time ago, she felt that it would be more appropriate to start much earlier and scrutinise the process, not the numbers at the end. So that will, I'm sure that there'll be no problem there. We will be scrutinising the process rather than all the tables that take absolutely ages to go through, and we gain very little from. And if I may, there seems to be some almost overlap and possibly gaps between the work that Overview and Scrutiny carry out and Audit and Standards, and I believe that officers are looking at that. So we don't yet know whether budget scrutiny will stay with Overview and Scrutiny. Presumably it will, but we need to look at all of the other processes, because some are scrutinised by Overview and Scrutiny, some are scrutinised by Audit and Standards, and we need to make sure that there's nothing falling through the gaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. No further questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I note from the forward work plan that your Overview and Scrutiny are scrutinising CIFCO report and business plan on next Monday. Is there any intention to scrutinise the holding companies? Because I'm not sure where they are scrutinised at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Wellham.
Thank you for that question. That's something that... Sorry, I've switched me off. Yes, that's possibly it is definitely one of the areas of scrutiny that's fallen through the gap. So I don't believe that the performance of the holding companies is scrutinised at all. So it ought to be considered either by scrutiny or probably more appropriately by Audit and Standards. But certainly that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Wellham, do you have anything else to add?
No, only to repeat that if there are members who have a burning desire to put something forward for scrutiny, please come and talk to me or any member of scrutiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. That report was for noting only. So that moves us on to item 12, MC 2210, Stowmarket Health, Education and Leisure Facilities. I would like to invite Councillor Richardson to introduce paper MC 2210 and to move the recommendations in the report. There are confidential appendices relating to this report. If members wish to discuss matters relating to these appendices, Can they please indicate, as we will then have to move on to a public exclusion part of the meeting. So, Councillor Richardson.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chair. I am delighted to introduce this report and the initial business case for the Stowmarket Health, Education and Leisure Facilities. This proposal, known temporarily as the Shelf Project, represents a significant piece of work that would considerably enhance the sporting and leisure facilities within Mid-Suffolk, enable the much-needed expansion of Stowmarket High School's facilities, and develop a new, innovative wellbeing hub to enable the co-location of services with our partners in health and social care. As members will be aware, both our wellbeing and leisure sport and physical activity strategies identified the need for improved facilities for a variety of different sport and physical activities, while growing demand on both education and health and social care services requires us to work collaboratively across Suffolk to meet it. Particular highlights in the sport provision of this proposal include a 4G football pitch, 4 new indoor sports courts, a new sport pavilion, a new cricket square, and a multi-surface perimeter track. It will also include a mini-track athletics facility, which we understand will be the first of its kind in the UK, helping to put Stowmarket and Mid-Suffolk on the map. In addition, expanding both the Leisure Centre and Stowmarket High sporting facilities will not only deliver benefits for current users, but will also create new opportunities for current and future residents of our district. I am, perhaps unsurprisingly, especially excited about the prospect of a wellbeing hub within the heart of Mid-Suffolk, which will allow for the co-location of services with a range of different providers. For those who were able to attend the site visit to Milton Hall earlier this year, I hope you'll agree just how exciting a possibility this is. All of this is especially important as we move beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. Investing in our communities and in new amenities will be a key part of promoting health and well-being for people of all ages and abilities in the future. With that in mind, we have engaged extensively with stakeholders, both local and national, to ensure this project delivers the best possible value for our residents. Turning to some of the practicalities, this report is primarily asking councillors to endorse Cabinet's decision to proceed with this project and approve the funding of £700,000 as outlined in paragraph 6.4 to take this project to its next stage. If approved, we will engage in further consultation and will develop a full business case with the aim that we bring it back to Cabinet and full council by the end of this year. In summary, there is still much to be done until this project becomes a reality, but if members approve the recommendations today, then I believe we will be taking a tangible and concrete step towards it. Finally, my thanks must go to Councillor Brewster and the Economic Growth and Climate Change team, I think I've got that right now, both for the work they've done on this to date and in anticipation of the work that I hope is soon to come. Thank you, Chair, and I would like to propose the recommendations in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Brewster. Thank you very much. We will now move to questions. Councillors, I would ask you again, if possible, to stick to 2 questions and keep them relevant to the subject matter being discussed here. I think Councillor Richardson will not mind if the questions are quite blunt and direct, because we are starting to get a bit behind in this meeting. So, yeah, so any questions, please? Councillor Amoroson.
Oh, hello. Thank you, Chair. If I'm really quick, and I have 3. So the first is, will the fields on the existing football and cricket area remain an open space for local residents on the Chiltern Estates and surrounding areas? Secondly, the nursery, I noticed the Foxglove Nursery is a stakeholder on the master plan, and I'm aware that they've been offered a space in the new hub, so I'm interested in what are the plans for the existing nursery building that's already on the site. And thirdly, if I may, Just a question on the mini track, the athletics track. It looks like there's space for a full-size track, so why not a full-size track that would open it up for more national events, etc.? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Richardson.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. In terms of the fields where the football and cricket facilities are currently, my understanding is they will still be open to the public. In terms of the existing nursery site, I don't believe there's a plan as yet, but I'll allow officers to come in if there indeed is one. In terms of the actual the mini track facility, I'll take officers' advice whether this is better dealt with under the closed session. But yes, there are specific reasons why we didn't pursue that option at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor, oh, sorry, Fiona.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to come in. Sorry. In terms of the nursery site, we are in discussions with them, as you pointed out. There's no firm plans for that particular area, but some of the options we've looked at is additional play space, for example.
In terms of the play area?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, in terms of the athletics track. Yeah, I don't think we're straying too much into confidential if I say that we've had extensive conversations with a number of national governing bodies, and the athletics national governing body wouldn't support a full-size athletics track just purely due to demand and the fact that within a reasonable drive time there are full-size tracks. It was actually their proposal to look at this mini track concept, which has been rolled out across Europe and Scandinavia very successfully.
Thank you. Councillor Passmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think it's a really cracking idea. I think it's a great that we're doing this for Stowmarket and for the whole district. If we were optimistic, when do you think we might, and assuming all things go to plan, which is always a huge assumption, probably unlikely, but with sensible contingencies built into it, when do you think this might actually come to fruition, assuming that we do approve this? Are we talking 7, 8, 9 years overall, do you think? I mean, it's a long-term project, clearly. I'm very, very pleased to see this. We've discussed things like this over many years, as people like Mrs. Otten and Mike Norris will remember. But I think it's just a job, just what we need for the district.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I think I will hand over to officers just to answer the specifics of that, but I certainly hope with my hand on my heart I can say in your lifetime, Councillor Parsons.
Well, I better keep on with my rugby refereeing in that case, so keep going for a long time.
The Assistant Director for Economic Development and Regeneration.
We are informally projecting by the end of 2025. That's not to say that some elements might not have to be phased, but certainly in terms of the sporting facilities, we would like to say by the end of 2025.
Thank you. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Richardson, for this report. With regards to, you mentioned further consultation, and at the moment the consultation has been very much concentrated on the Stowmarket area and with professional sports bodies. Will the consultation from now on include villages, particularly the villages around Stowmarket? Because obviously they're developing their own sports and wellbeing offerings, and I wouldn't want them to double up, but equally, if they are developing something that can be used from people in the Stowmarket, then clearly we want to make sure that's all joined up together. So please could you tell me when they'll be consulted on and how this is going to happen with regard to sports groups in the villages and parish councils and so forth. Secondly, I'm not going to mention specific costs, but in the confidential section there's details of costs, but can we know when we'll be able to scrutinise the costs on the full project going forward? Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. And bear with me if I just refer to my papers for a moment. So without going into, again, the specifics that would take us into the closed session, but we do, as part of the restricted papers, have a plan for the engagement over the coming months that will include opportunities for everyone to be involved, including those in the neighbouring vicinity of Stowmarket. In terms of the second question about the scrutiny of the overall numbers, our expectation is that that would also come with the full business case. So in other words, by the end of the year is the target date that we've set ourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Thank you. By the end of the year, the feasibility study of the full business case, and you're asking for 700,000. That's about 10 man years' work. Are you going to get it done in that schedule?
Thank you, Chair. But just before I answer that question, just to go back to Councillor Eban's point, just for clarity, because I referenced it, but actually it's on page 139 that gives the detail of the engagement plan. And in terms of Councillor Field's question, I've been given no indication by officers why that isn't feasible. If they'd like to give any additional reassurance, then I'd invite them to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What assurances can Councillor Richardson give that sporting organisations other than those resident on site will have unhindered access to these facilities, and how will any such assurances be enshrined to make sure of that access?
Councillor Richardson.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. So we've had, I think, a number of ongoing conversations and have developed quite positive relationships with a number of sport providers and clubs and teams within Stowmarket and the surrounding area. In terms of sort of the specifics and the technicalities of any agreement, I suspect that would need to be formed as part of the governance arrangements that will sort of form the next phase of this project, so that by the time we come back with a full business case, we can provide you with that certainty around access. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
Thank you. As one who did attend the Mildenhall Hub visit, I would be really delighted if that was what we were getting. But am I mistaken that part of this is, well, as the school's concerned, that they are unable to maintain well, being a wrong build in a wrong area, and they can't look after the students. That's why they were pushing for a location for the hub to be built around it to maintain there. And also regards the, there was some drive to, 7 years ago, the leisure centre. There was a unanimous recommendation to actually level it and build again, but it wasn't done so. This leisure centre being old, recently the manager who spoke about the unable to insulate, for energy inefficiency, the lack of disability access to the upstairs, the lift out of order. I could go on, but would this project be looked at possibly either combining the school, as was the recommendation on visit, or combining the school and the leisure centre to actually improve the access to them, or to do a state-of-the-art building which could be looked at, which would be a benefit to Stowmarket, as it would not be beneficial to actually deliver something which we should have in place already, which we say we do have in place already, which isn't fit for standards. Would that not be an idea to look at doing that first before expanding? And also, regards the, I know the planned sell-off of a plot of land regards near the school. There has been quite a bit of concern from local residents regards, this is the main drop-off station for students going to attending a school. When that's been closed before, there's been conflicts with vehicles parked on the side of the road, causing it to restrict access for emergency vehicles, and they've not felt safe doing so. On daily, we do have daily reports of actually, as well, people parking in the leisure centres currently, where they pull in, and conflicts with pedestrians on the path as they just pull in straight away, and the issue of that. The loss of a current parking bay, and also a more restrictive parking layout, how are we going to compensate? How are we going to look at avoiding these road issues? How are we going to provide adequate parking, which doesn't currently look like there is going to be? It's going to be more of a concrete block around. It's a bit concerning. Very final, very quickly, there's some local concerns regards the possibility of loss of trees, which on the site visits we've discussed it definitely would be lost. Now they're not, but on the plan it still looks as if these trees are not currently, they're not on the plan, the track's still on top of them, so are these trees definitely still going to be there? And if they are, could we have an updated plan to actually show what's going to be there and what's not? It's very difficult to tell by the plan.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do my best to answer as much of that as I can, because it's quite an extensive question. In terms of, firstly, concern from the school, I'm not aware of that being expressed to myself, but I'll allow officers to correct me if I'm wrong on that. In terms of the leisure centre, so it's a very good point about whether we can enhance the facility itself. I suspect what Mid-Suffolk will look to do, and it's quite useful that we've got Cass here, given the relationship she has with the leisure centre, is continually be having conversations with them about how we can improve access and things like insulation. But I suspect, given, and again, I'm just going to make passing reference to what's in the restricted papers, given the sort of funding envelope we are looking at, I think going for anything larger, more comprehensive is probably not going to be feasible, but certainly it's a question worth asking. In terms of the sale of the land, what's regarded as the enabling land within the master plan, I think there's sort of two things to say. First of all, there is no definitive agreed plan for what that land will be used for at present. But second of all, within the master plan, there is provision for increased and improved car parking within the site for the school. And then in terms of the loss of trees, again, I think it's almost going to be too premature at this stage to work out exactly that level of detail, but we'd expect that to come through in a full planning application or an outline planning application when and if, hopefully, it reaches that stage. So I hope that answers, to the best of my ability, those questions, but officers can, by all means, jump in if I've missed anything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think this fits well with what Councillor Carter's just been asking about. When the Chiltern Lays housing, which is, as we know, is sort of halfway through being built out now, when that was being planned and started, we did not get the connectivity of that estate, which of course is right next to what we're talking about, wraps round what we're talking about here. We did not get the sort of connectivity into the town for walking and cycling purposes that was really needed. It remains poor, and really you just finish up on the road if you're a cyclist, and particularly in terms of this hub, we're thinking about connectivity from the railway station to the hub, and I think that I would plead that those things are taken into consideration, and the bus service up Chiltern Way and indeed round the new estate is skeletal, minimal, not very much. So yeah, if we could get those things actually addressed as part of that project, it may alleviate some of the parking problems that Councillor Carter's talked to. Thank you.
So that was a statement and not a question. I don't know if Councillor Richardson.
Well, that's fair enough. It's also, if Councillor Richardson wants to respond to it,
yeah, more than happy to. That I think, with regards to the particular aspects about cycling and walking, we do have the LC WIP, the Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan, coming to Cabinet on the 4th of July, so we can pick up those concerns as part of that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Warboys.
Wrong button, right. Yeah, I've got a general question and sort of a couple of specific questions. The general question is, we've got a table of a number of stakeholders and sports clubs that are involved in the proposal. And I'd be interested to know the level of consultation that's gone on and whether how much feedback they've given when they've seen sight of the master plan. I've got a couple of points about the master plan I'd like to make, or would you like me to make those later in the debate?
Yes, could you please make those in debate? Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. I might have to refer to officers for the exact specifics about the frequency of consultation, but I think in general terms, I think we can say there's been a lot of stakeholder engagement. As far as the master plan is concerned, my understanding is that this has actually been designed in close consultation with those bodies, and they, both local and national, have given their input into it in much the same way that they were expressing their view on the full athletics track, for example. But if officers want to come in, then I'll defer to them. Thank you, Chair.
The Assistant Director for Development and Regeneration.
Thank you. So, yes, we have designed the scheme in consultation with a huge range of stakeholders and potential partners. We set up something very early on, so about 8 or 9 months ago now, called a Stakeholders Forum, which had a range of sporting clubs, not just those on the site actually, but further reaching than that, other clubs. And they have been instrumental in helping to design this master plan. They've seen the master plan a number of times, and it's evolved through their comments and feedback. Equally, we have a project group set up with some key landowners and partners on the site itself. That includes partners such as the high school, and they also meet monthly. They've also been instrumental in designing this scheme with the consultancy team and ourselves.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. Some of these points or questions have sort of been touched on, but I think they're still relevant. You've talked about the consultation there will be with residents of neighbouring villages, but have you had consultation to ensure that you're meeting the needs of neighbouring villages' teams? Has that been taken into account? Because there are some villages that have got a lot of football teams, cricket teams and so on that might need to use the facility. So are you, in this development of this scheme, have you taken account of those existing teams and so on? Because I fear if not, there may be a significant under-provision on this site. And have you taken any account of sports for which there are currently no facilities in the area? There are some emerging sports and some sports that have absolutely no provision, and people have to go to all sorts of... I'm not suggesting you have ice hockey there, but I mean, I'm aware of a few sports that people need to travel to Colchester or Cambridge for. So are you aware of all those? And Councillor Matheson talked about cycling and walking. You mentioned the LC whip, but really, have you considered how people will access the sports area by public transport and also walking and cycling? I think to say that we're going to look at the LC whip in a few months' time, that's insufficient. Have you actually, trying to be blunt now, have you actually done anything about looking at how people will get there without using a car? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you very much, Chair. So in terms of the first one about local need, I think what I just reflect on, and this is in the report, is that what we've effectively used as our evidence base is the leisure, sport and physical activity strategy. So that was something that was introduced last year, I think it was about the summer, and as part of the update to that strategy, we commissioned an external consultancy who went away and did both a quantitative and qualitative analysis of both existing facilities, demand, and therefore what our gap effectively is. And so we've based it on that evidence base. In terms for alternative sports that perhaps aren't as popular currently, my understanding is that a number of these facilities are multi-purpose. So if there are future sports which do become more attractive and more popular, then they can use the facilities we have here. Particularly if I could just give the example of the 4 sports courts that are being attached to the leisure centre aren't designed for any particular one sport in mind, but have multiple different uses. In terms of the sort of public transport links to the site, I might need to ask officers for the specifics, but I think the general point I would make is that one of the great advantages of this site is that it is in our largest town that does have quite good commuter links both by rail and bus. And so I think that's kind of a key consideration as to the general principle of this project, is that it's with all of the sort of right key stakeholders involved. It's in a location where there is an existing need to expand, and obviously there is the development next door that has resulted in close collaboration with the council. So I think if we were to look at a site for this particular facility, I can't imagine anywhere else in the district that would be suitable for it, or indeed is a better place for it, quite frankly. But I'll hand over to officers if they've got any more detail to add to that. Thank you, Chair.
Assistant Director for Economic Development and Regeneration.
Thank you. Just to add a little bit more to the second question, we have actually been actively speaking to a number of different sporting organisations that are not currently represented on the site. If I gave the example of hockey, so we've been talking to, I think it's England hockey, not British hockey, but yeah, they're very keen. There's no presence in Stowmarket and very little presence in Mid-Suffolk, so they're very keen to see how we could set up, even if it was a small club operating from the site. So yes, we have, and that's one of the benefits of talking extensively to many national governing bodies and regional governing bodies for sports. They've given us a good feel for what else we need to put on the site in terms of offer for other sports. In terms of the final point, we've been working very closely with our Sustainable Travel Officer, Catherine Davis, and we've also had discussions with County Highways with particular regard to bus routes and buses. There's clearly more work to be done. I think we feel that the current master plan has indicative routes across the site to improve connectivity. The next stage of work very much is how we link it better into the town centre itself. So that's still work in progress, but it is being thought about.
Yeah, go on.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you've taken account of what sports you know about, but that information may be a year or so out of date. The big growth area, I think, around is the growth of disabled sport. So are you aware of that? Will you take it into account, please?
Councillor Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I think the short answer to that is yes, absolutely. I think one of the key, reflections or just general points about this particular report is that this is not the end product by any means. That the next phase, I think, is where some of the really interesting design work can be done. So we can certainly take that into account. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, thank you. Can I thank all concerned for actually trying to move on the sports provision in the Stowmarket area and certainly Mid-Suffolk. I think over decades it's not unkind to say that there's been a number of grand schemes put forward in Mid-Suffolk that when they were delivered were a little bit short of what was promised at the start. And I would hope we don't fall into that trap here. Just on that note, I just wanted to double check on page 141, where it says first fist floor. I thought we were going to do boxing for a moment. That is a typo, I take it. Because when it was looking about changing stuff here, I was looking for the bar. Not because I don't want to drink, but because that is normally the economic engine of an awful lot of sports clubs. It means they become financially sustainable. It raises a slight concern where this one is now proposed, i.e. on the first floor. And the accommodation up there on the first floor can hold at least 300 people up there. Have we checked with the relevant fire safety officers that that is buildable and safe in that current design? Because the design looks quite exciting and quite interesting, but I'd hate us not to be able to deliver it for safety reasons. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I probably need to hand over to officers to answer the specifics of that one, but before I do that, can I just double check with officers about whether this is straying into the restricted papers, just because page 141 with the typo that Councillor String was referring to on my pack is in the restricted papers. So I just wanted to double check that we're happy to proceed on that basis. Otherwise, I'll hand over to officers in that case. Thank you.
Assistant Director for Development and Regeneration.
So obviously the building has been designed by a proper architect in line with current building standards and building regulations. I haven't specifically asked him that question. I have to say I can take it away. But obviously as we go through the detailed design phase, we'll be having conversations with our building control team, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Fleming.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And this is really good news for Stowmarket and for the district, so I absolutely welcome it. I have one clear question, that is tennis courts. Where are they? Because the current tennis courts at the leisure centre, a number of years I have played on them, and they were pretty rough then, so I'm not quite sure what sort of state they're in now. I really think tennis is important, especially with the schools, and I would hope to see tennis included in our plans. And I don't see the Tennis Association, Lawn Tennis Association, included in the list of organisations that we've consulted. So that is my main question. I can't resist but make a comment following Councillor Stringer's remarks about the bar. Having a good, welcoming bar is clearly very important, and I'm disappointed that there's no longer a bar at the current leisure centre, because I have many memories of playing squash there and having a couple of pints afterwards. And, you know, I think having a nice bar would be just such an important part of this development. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm certainly learning a lot this evening. In terms of the question about tennis, again, my sort of immediate response is that because we've based this on the leisure, sport and physical activity strategy, that may not have been an identified need at the time that report was commissioned, but if officers want to come in on that, then obviously I'm more than happy to defer to them.
So we've been in direct contact with the Lawn Tennis Association, both at a national and a regional level. And as Councillor Richardson said, we have obviously based this on evidence gained, extensive evidence and audits for the sport and leisure strategy. There is the ability to play tennis on the multi-use games area, but it will be a multi-use games area, so there won't be any dedicated spaces. And certainly the national and regional governing bodies are happy with that approach.
Yes, Councillor Fleming.
Thank you. I really feel this is an important factor, especially for older people, as well as teaching young people tennis. Wortham Tennis Club is in my division, and Wortham is a pretty small village compared to Stowmarket, but it's extremely active and successful. It's open in the evenings, it's open to people who work, and one of the reasons the need might not have been identified is maybe because of the state of the courts for so long. And Needham Market, I used to play at Needham Market tennis courts. If you've looked at them recently, you'd understand why that's a complete failure. And I think these are the sort of things we need to really re-examine.
Councillor Richardson.
I think I'll just say that I agree with what Councillor Fleming has said, and we can certainly take her comments on board. If officers want to jump in, then by all means. Thank you.
The Assistant Regeneration and Project Manager. Thank you.
Hi, just to come back on that, sorry. The local club rep we've been working with as well, and they're happy with their current provision, but they would like to expand where they are. They don't necessarily want to be separated into two sites massively, but what they'd like to do work with us is to develop pathways to ensure that their tennis arena isn't lost within this project.
Thank you very much. Councillor Amoroson, you have already, I think I counted 5 questions in your last one, but you are very direct and concise, and I like the way you ask questions, so I'll allow you to come in again.
Thank you very much. It's been touched on earlier when I asked about the nursery, about younger children's play area, and with that in mind, I wondered what provision might there be for free play for younger children in the initial plans, not just a kind of as an afterthought about what we might do with the nursery, as it's been part of previous conversations about play provision regarding the Chiltern Lees estate, especially that end of it. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very valid point. I don't know whether officers have got any particular detail, but otherwise I think as part of the next phase, which obviously is the more detailed design, then there's no reason why we couldn't include or look to include that within the scheme itself.
Councillor Eppignon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if the officer covered this point, but just to assure Councillor Fleming that we have a thriving tennis club in Stowmarket, and they're always looking for members, so I would highly recommend you get in touch.
I'm not sure where the question mark was on that one. So, but I think that's it for questions now. Councillor Richardson, would you like to add anything? Sorry, we'll go to debate. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it's good to see this coming forward. It has been a long time in coming, and various members have alluded to the reasons for that, so it is good to see it coming forward. I do, though, still have a plea. Having looked through the papers, I can't find any word that says villages will be consulted, so I do hope that the surrounding villages will be fully consulted, and especially with all of their sports clubs and well-being activities that they're doing, and all of that comment, as it were, from those villages and organisations and communities around Stowmarket gets incorporated into this, so we don't have to. So what we get here is the best we can get, and we don't have to then redo it in a few years' time because we've missed something. I think following on from that, I would hope as well that it doesn't preclude the district from supporting village major projects in surrounding villages. I mean, to give an example, when Needham had artificial pitches put in, as soon as they were put in, they were fully booked for a year. You know, these facilities will get snapped up, so we need to ensure that there is support for major projects in the surrounding communities. And on the actual master plan, I note the sort of enabling land, and I would kind of urge that we don't look at this as a priority to use this as enabling land, but use it as facilities for sporting and for well-being, and I think that should be the priority within all of this, because this land is surrounded by housing on all four sides, and we're not going to get any extra land back, as it were, so I would hope that that can be considered in the final plans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Warboys, you very kindly saved your comments for the debate. Would you like to go now?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yes. Very specifically, looking at I find it a bit difficult to accept the sort of recommendations in the master plan, because looking at a few questions arise personally. First one is quite a simple one. If I was having a new cricket field, I certainly wouldn't have sort of accepted the overlapping of a cricket pitch with a football pitch. It does exist at present, looking at Google Maps, which I've just done, and looking at the mowing. However, it's a new pitch. Stowmarket's got a cricket club's got an old tradition of playing first-class cricket, and they'd be wanting to produce a first-class surface. So, you know, the thoughts of the two sports have got very different needs. It's both grass, but they've got very different needs in terms of how it's cut, how it's prepared. That leaves one of the second point is I don't see any sort of capacity for on-site storage of maintenance of equipment or sports equipment for that matter. I have another concern about, again, this is on the restricted list, but it's a general point about the changing rooms, really. That there's 8 changing rooms indicated, which are fine for gender-specific games. But quite a lot of sports allow for mixed gender activities. So I would question whether that's an adequate size or number of changing rooms to allow 4 games to take part. Some of those games may well be mixed gender. And again, I think it is sort of part of the recommendation where you have an advisory committee being set up, which includes cabinet and ward members. I feel very happy if that was extended to people who had a particular interest in a particular sport. I'm sorry Mr. Passmore's chosen to leave the building because of his passion for rugby. I'm quite passionate about cricket and have some expertise. And we've heard from Councillor Fleming, who's quite passionate about tennis as well. I'd like to see that incorporated into the master plan, and perhaps that advisory committee could be extended to those who have a particular interest and knowledge. And another issue, it's conversations that I've had with people, and it's with regard to the school, the capacity of the school. Am I going on too long?
No, well, you've still got time.
Thank you. I'll go on a bit longer then. I can't hear terribly well.
If you'd like to wrap up, you've still got a bit of time just to finish what you're saying.
I'll come round to wrapping up. It's the provision of the school and the capacity of the school and possible expansion of the school in order to improve its own facilities. So I think my concern about that is the future proof of the scheme, whether it is adequate for, I'm sure it's adequate for current provision, and I think it's a wonderful concept, but whether this will be adequate for future demands on the site, particularly by the school, but also perhaps by encouraging more people to participate in sport, which I think is the whole purpose of the scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That wasn't the elevator, that was my mic. I think it's a wonderful thing. I've been involved as the chair on some of those stakeholder meetings, and they were really good because actually we did go out and seek information and involvement from many sports clubs. In fact, we advertised across the whole district, and so many came. So we got quite a lot of feedback actually from not only the residents, because they came as well, but also all the sports clubs around Stowmarket and the local district area. And that was really good. And that allowed you, I think, to go away and create your plan, which I think has grown from what I first saw into something that looks amazing. We talk about the cricket. Cricket's already there. It already mixes with the football, pretty much, and it works really well, and it's well protected, but it's a very good point and one that should be taken on, I think. When we talk about how do we get there, well, I don't know about you, Councillor Mathewson, but I live close to Chiltern Way, and I can tell you that on there, we get buses every 30 minutes. So actually, they're not skeletal at all. There's really good access. Plus, we're going to get extra car parking, which is ideal. And for those that want to walk or cycle, we've got cycleways, and we've got adequate pavements. Perfect. The most important thing about this, I think, is on 4.6. Physical activity is the single most important thing you can do to improve your physical and mental health. And with 25.4% of adults in Mid-Suffolk doing less than 30 minutes of exercise per week, improved facilities and integrated support is more important than ever. And as they say, build it and they will come. And that's true. So we need to support this. It's really good. And actually, it's good for everybody. So let's welcome it, let's support it, and thank you for your work.
Councillor Amoroson.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just to bring up the point Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Matheson brought up about the footpaths. It's already been identified that there's not sufficient connectivity between the new Chiltern Lees estate and the existing, especially with regards to the new school that's on Chiltern Lees, but also as Chiltern Lees develops further to the west. Yeah, I think we are going to need to think about footpaths from that new part of it into the existing to the new shelf facilities. So I'm not sure. So next point, I'm not sure if we have covered the idea of as a leisure facility. Are these facilities going to be open to the public to use to just walk on site and use? For example, you've got, if you look at Ipswich and Christchurch Park, They've got the tennis courts, which they take no booking. They're free to use. They're just like a public facility open to all. And while we're on the point of championing our sporting passions, then certainly as a younger guy, I was very into basketball. And I know that within the leisure centre there's the basketball facility. I've never seen it being used. There's certainly no local groups apart from you've got the Bury Bulldogs who operate out of various facilities up that way. But I'd really like to see a open to all outdoor basketball court that people can just rock up to and start playing. So yeah, if I'm allowed to champion my sport, then yeah, let's get an outdoor basketball court. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you've heard. I mean, we do need to improve the facilities for walking, cycling, and more buses. We need lots more buses, really, especially with the additional number of houses, 1,000-something houses being built in the immediate vicinity. But the basic project, I mean, it's great. We definitely want to do it and get ahead with it and all the rest of it. Yes, jolly good, all in support, certainly be voting for it. One thing we really need to tackle, and that is a great disappointment at the moment, and that is there's a whole nother playing field in the middle of Stowmarket, formerly associated with the middle school, which has not got involved into this project because of various difficulties that the Assistant Director will be pleased to tell you about at great length or not. But at the end of the day, we cannot leave that field not adequately used to the fullest extent that we can, and so that will need to be returned to. So with that, I say jolly good project.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carter.
Well, as we're debating sports, I could always ask which sport offers the best cardio for any elderly, fully inclusive, and obviously that would be, as Councillor Wellham pointed out, it would be wheelchair sports. And we spoke about before about possibility of putting these on, having hiring facilities for adapted wheelchairs. We'd be a first in the country, sports in the country, to actually be able to do if we actually offered adapted wheelchairs for hire for everyone. So if we can do that, I'm fully supportive of that. It would be one thing to strive for, to actually be able to put forward. We have all these sports, we have all these courts, and now we have all the adapted vehicles which everyone can use for. That would be ideal. The other part I was going to go for, if I can get my brain to connect what it was on my tip of my tongue 5 seconds ago. I always love it when this happens. Oh, yes.
Would you like me to come back to you, Councillor Carter?
Yes, please, so I don't dig myself even deeper whilst I'm...
No problem at all. Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. We won't be the first place in England to have specially adapted wheelchairs for sport. Having played many years ago, having played wheelchair hockey, I can confess I wasn't very good at it and got injured, as did most people who were playing it. Now my question or my request is, 3.4 is great. Yeah, really welcome the inclusion of local ward members, but I think this is something that we're all going to need to know about. So can I give a plea that we're all given regular feedbacks of progress, the sort of information that we can give to our residents. Oh, and there's tennis courts in Stow Upland, but they have boot camp on there. You can hear it from Queen of St Mary. So my plea is that we're all given regular updates. But I welcome the project. I think it's well worthwhile and we need to get on with it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Muller.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I must admit, I think the actual walking routes are actually very good up to that site. I've regularly walked from Cedars Park, because I don't have a car, up to that site. I was there recently for Stowe Fiesta, etc. And it's only about a 40-minute walk, you know, right across the town. So I think the connectivity is actually very good. I do fully support this project. I think it's excellent for Stowmarket, and I think it does offer an excellent selection of sports, which we don't have at the present time. So well done, and thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I think that's the end of debate now. So, oh, sorry, Councillor Carter, I said I'd come back.
Yes, I do fully support the projects. This is early days yet, and there's more that we can offer, and I look forward to looking into it in more detail to what we can offer in future. I do have to warn everybody that if we do vote us through and we do lose the current play area at the rugby field, my daughter will find everybody, she will hunt us down, and she will slaughter you in your sleep. That is her favourite. So that is a slightly idle threat, but I hope. But yeah, fully support this. Just needs iron out some of the kinks, some of more reassurance, and yes, I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, very much in support of the project as a Stowmarket member. Helps to fill a gap that we've had for a very long time, as others have mentioned, but without straying into the restrictive papers, the two biggest single challenges I think that we face with the project is funding and the shortfall, and secondly, the successful management of the facility once it's in place. It's something that hasn't been mentioned tonight, but there are a number of ways of managing a facility such as this, and it doesn't appear to me there's a clear, obvious way of doing that yet. So there's a lot of work to do on that, but I'm sure that we can get it over the finishing line.
Thank you. And I'll call that the end of debate. And I just invite Councillor Richardson. Do you wish to add anything?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. Just a few general comments, if I may, in closing the debate.
Apologies, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Brewster reserved his right to speak. Would you like to make any comments now?
Sorry. I would like to thank Councillor Richardson for all the answers he's given tonight, because you know, he's done very, very well. Yes, we started this project many months ago now, and I think actually it's a really good project, and those of us who travelled to Colchester and then up to not Long Melford, what is it? Milton Hall, nearly got it right. We'll see the benefits that we could get and how we could use it, and you know that is really the bottom point of the product, and I know that our Fiona actually worked on the one at Colchester, so I think there is no doubt that that will carry us a long, long way. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chair. Just in concluding then, a few brief points. I'm very pleased to see there seems to be a general consensus that this is a very positive step forward for the district, notwithstanding some of the suggestions made. And I mean, I'm not one to make promises on the fly, but I think we can certainly look into some of those as the scheme develops. Particularly, and I'm just looking at recommendation 3.4, it does obviously include the creation of a member working group. So particularly those councillors who are local, so Councillor Morrison, Councillor Humphreys, there will be the opportunity to be involved, as I say, as this scheme develops. And again, that is just something I really would want to emphasise, is that what we're looking at is by no means the finished product. There will be further work, much to be done, so nothing is set in stone, so I very much hope I will not be the victim of Councillor Carter's daughter. But there is obviously, I think, a good deal of work to get us to the point at which we do have a full business case with all of the commensurate funding and governance arrangements in place. And so, again, without wishing to stray into the restricted papers, I completely agree with what Councillor Scarpa said. Those will be the major challenges for us as a council. And lastly, again, just wonderful to hear so many members championing the sport provisions within the district. Councillor Epinio, I don't wish to make promises on Councillor Fleming's behalf, but I'm sure she would be delighted to join the tennis club as long as there is a bar. And so finally, Mr Chairman, just to really endorse this report to the Council and ask members to vote in favour, and if so, then I look forward to presenting the full business case back to you all as and when it becomes ready. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to the vote. I will ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Councillor Carter, would you like to give your vote?
Yes, please. I've been moved off by my sister.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And Councillor Gould?
4, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's 28-4. That's carried. We'll now go on to item 13, councillor appointments. Are there any changes to place-ins?
None to report, Chair.
No? None? Thank you. Item 14, motions on notice.
None received, Chair.
And with that, we'll close the meeting. The date of the next meeting is Thursday, the 21st of July, 2022 at 5:30. And we'll close the meeting at 7:52.